Licensed video games have a bad reputation, and with good reason. The whole point of these games is to take a popular intellectual property and turn it into a viable product, so gameplay usually takes a back seat to the source material. Off the top of my head, I'd say that maybe 1 out of every 5 licensed games are worth playing, and that top 20% only exists because of developers who manage to either use a license as the foundation for a unique experience, or make a great game in spite of its license. Yu Yu Hakusho Makyo Toitsusen would fall squarely into the latter category, since it's a toss-up of various fighting game mechanics that all come together to create a solid game that can be enjoyed by anyone, even if they aren't familiar with the source material. Makyo Toitsusen was created by famed indie developer Treasure, and it was released for the Mega Drive in 1994, just around the time that the fighting game bubble of the 90s was beginning to swell. Looking at it now, the visual design is a bit underwhelming. Many screens are dull, most of the stages are quite static, and the meter designs are textbook colored blocks. The sprites are quite accurate to the story art that the game is based off of, but your mileage may vary. The only things that stand out visually are the character select screen and combo counter, but the look of the game is its only shortcoming, and the way it handles more than makes up for it. The game takes place in a tournament setting with up to 4 players thrashing it out at once. There are 2 attack buttons, one for weak attacks and another for strong attacks, along with a block button. Each fighter has their own set of special moves which are powered by spirit energy, and you can charge your spirit meter by holding down an attack button. There is no auto-lock function for focusing on fighters, so you are free to face any direction that you please. It may seem a bit unusual at first, but you'd be surprised to see how practical it is to just step out of the way of an attack. Each character can dash forwards or backwards, and although there is no air blocking, you can use double jumps to dodge attacks in mid-air. Fights are held on a 2-plane system, ripped almost completely from Fatal Fury 2, with a glaring omission of line attacks. And much like in Fatal Fury, it's used to evade attacks. It's not all that useful in a one-on-one fight aside from line shifting to sidestep projectiles, but it's much more useful in a multiplayer battle when you want to stay out of the action and recharge. Speaking of SNK shenanigans, each fighter also has a desperation move that can only be used when their health is low, although they also need a full spirit meter to pull it off. There are also a couple of neat features that were slightly ahead of their time. For example, there were reach attacks, which could be performed from a standing position or a dash. These reach attacks have better range than normal attacks and could either knock down opponents or be used to start combos, but they also had lousy recovery time. Each character could also throw their opponent, which usually launches them into the air, prone for any attack that can connect before they hit the ground. You can also string together combos in the air, which may or may not be able to be capped off with a special move, depending on which character you're using. And finally, there's the Colliding Guard. Colliding Guard occurs when 2 melee attacks or special attacks connect. When this happens, a small green ripple effect appears and the attacks bounce off of each other with no damage dealt to either fighter. It's an interesting way to stuff attacks, and it came out 15 years before KOF and Neo Wave were due. Makyo Toitsusen doesn't really make any use of the Yu Yu Hakusho license, aside from the levels, the characters, and the tournament mode, and it's a bit of a shame, especially since that meant that it could have been ported to the Genesis and localized for the US without much fuss. But at the same time, the fact that the game mechanics aren't committed to the series meant that Treasure was free to use it again if they ever wanted to, which they did in 2006 for the first Nintendo DS Bleach Fighter, and again in 2007 for its sequel. Some disgruntled Treasure fans use this as fodder for a meta commentary on the state of the company as a whole nowadays, but that would cheapen all 3 games, so let's just agree that they're all fun fighters despite their individual flaws.